Hello, dear viewers of my channel. Today we'll be talking about tanks from World War II, which served in various roles. Each of them was designed with one purpose: to destroy enemy armored vehicles and fortifications. We'll explore the most famous medium tanks from the main countries involved in the conflict and learn about their features, combat experience, and interesting facts. USA M4 Sherman. The American M4 Sherman medium tank was developed in 1940 by U.S. regulation and became the main battle tank of the American Army during World War II. It was based on the light M3 Lee, but the gun was moved to a fully traversing turret, which greatly increased firing flexibility. The Sherman saw its first combat in North Africa in October 1942 as part of British forces at El Alamein, and soon participated in the Allied landings in Tunisia and Italy. A total of approximately 49,300 vehicles were produced. The basic characteristics of the Sherman, model 1942, weight of approximately 30 tons, a Wright R975 engine producing 400 to 450 horsepower, speed of up to 40 to 48 kilometers per hour, armor up to 75 millimeters thick with average frontal penetration, armament of a 75 millimeter M3 gun, later 76 millimeter and 105 millimeter, and machine guns. Its strengths were reliability and ease of production. The Sherman proved to be reliable, relatively inexpensive to produce, and available in huge quantities. Its powerful gasoline engine and sophisticated mechanics ensured high reliability and maintainability. A significant factor was the massive transfer of thousands of Shermans to the Allies, the British and the USSR, under Lend-Lease. The Sherman's weaknesses included relatively thin armor and the low penetration of its standard gun against late German medium-heavy tanks. The high, bulky roof made the tank visible, and the narrow tracks impaired cross-country performance, especially in mud. Sherman losses were high. Tens of thousands of vehicles were lost in combat, but their combat use ensured the Allies' numerical superiority. Interesting facts include: the Sherman became the basis for many vehicles: self-propelled guns, and anti-tank vehicles, and continued to serve even after the war, Korean War and later. Let's move on to German medium tanks. Germany, Panzer III and Panzer IV. The German Panzer III medium tank was developed by Daimler-Benz from the mid-1930s and entered service in 1937 to 1938. It was actively used from the very beginning of the war. It participated in the Polish and French campaigns of 1939 to 1940, and then in battles in the East and Africa. Initially armed with a 37 millimeter cannon, the Panzer III was able to engage early Soviet T-26 and BT tanks. Later, it received a 50 millimeter KWK-38 cannon, but was no longer effective against the new heavy Soviet KV-1 and T-34 tanks. By 1943, approximately 5,774 of these vehicles had been produced, excluding the Stuggy 3 self-propelled gun. The model weighed approximately 23 tons, had a 300 horsepower Maybach engine, a speed of up to 40 kilometers per hour, and armor up to 30 to 50 millimeters thick, light by war standards. The Panzer III's strengths included a well-designed three-man turret, commander, gunner, and loader, decent mobility, and easy to master. However, when confronted with the T-34 and KV-1, the Panzer III proved inferior in both armor and gun. The Germans reinforced it with a 50 millimeter cannon, but it was still inferior in both firepower and armor. As a result, by the end of 1943, Panzer III production ceased, and the vehicles were converted into Stu-G 3 self-propelled guns, which remained in production until the end of the war. Direct comparisons: in combat, it was inferior to the Soviet T-34 in frontal armor and muzzle energy, but superior to the French Somua S-35, better armed. Panzer III losses were significant. Many were lost in the first year of the war, but detailed figures differ. An interesting fact: approximately 18,000 Stu-G 3 self-propelled guns were assembled from the Panzer III chassis, making it Germany's most widely produced tank. The next major German medium tank was the Panzer IV, developed in the late 1930s by Krupp. It became the Germans' workhorse of armored forces. Its first combat experience was in Poland in 1939, 211 vehicles and divisions, and France in 1940. A total of approximately 8,553 units were produced. The Panzer IV model varied in modifications. Early versions had a short 75mm barrel for infantry support, while later H/J versions had a long-barreled KWK-40 for fighting enemy armored vehicles. It weighed approximately 25 tons and produced 300 to 400 horsepower. Maybach, speed up to 38 to 42 kilometers per hour, frontal armor up to 50 to 80 millimeters in later versions. The Panzer IV was actively used on the Eastern and Western fronts, in Africa, in Italy. It was the only German tank produced continuously throughout the war. It initially replaced the aging Panzer III as the main battle tank. After the introduction of the long-barreled gun, the Panzer IV became the division's primary weapon. The Panzer IV's strengths were the versatility and power of its gun, especially from the H version onward, as well as its ability to be upgraded to accommodate thicker armor and guns. It performed well, for example, at the Battle of Kursk in 1943, when it became the Wehrmacht's main workhorse. The Panther was just entering service at that time. The Panzer IV's weaknesses included its relatively narrow tracks, which made movement difficult in muddy conditions, and its vulnerability in numerous battles with superior Soviet tanks in 1944-45. Panzer IV losses were very high. An estimated 6,153 vehicles were destroyed or disabled on the Eastern Front, accounting for approximately 75% of all Panzer IV losses. In 1943 alone, the Wehrmacht wrote off more than 2,350 of these tanks, and in 1944, over 2,640. Interestingly, by the end of the war, both the Panzer III and Panzer IV were primarily serving as support tanks, anti-tank self-propelled guns. The Panther and Tiger were already entering the front lines. Now about British tanks. Great Britain, Cromwell and Churchill. The British Cromwell is one of the best British medium tanks, fast and reliable. Its development began in 1941, and it reached the front in the summer of 1944. Its first battle was Normandy, June 1944, where by that time all the main British medium tanks were already in active use. The Cromwell A-27M carried a 75mm QF Mark V gun and was powered by a 600 horsepower Rolls-Royce Meteor aircraft engine, giving the tank a top speed of up to 64 kilometers per hour on roads. Armor protection was moderate, 64 millimeters thick on the front hull and approximately 76 millimeters on the front turret. A total of approximately 4,016 Cromwell tanks were produced. They fought with the 7th and 11th Tank Divisions and Guards units. Its strengths included record-breaking mobility and reliability for the Allies. The Meteor propeller allowed for quick engine repairs. Its weaknesses included a weak 75mm turret gun for 1944. It was insufficient against Panthers and Tigers, as well as rather thin side armor. In battle, Cromwell tanks performed well on hilly or broken terrain, where their suspension gave them an advantage over the bulky German tanks. Interestingly, the Cromwell was the first to feature an improved rotating cupola for the commander, an idea later adopted even by the Germans. Another British medium tank, the Churchill, was officially designated an infantry heavy tank, but its early modifications had performance characteristics close to average. Production began in 1941, with approximately 5,640 tanks of all modifications built. The first variants I-2 were armed with two 40mm guns and a 3-inch howitzer. Later, Mecca III received a 57mm 6-pound gun. Weighing approximately 39 tons and with a 102mm track diameter, the Churchill's frontal armor was very thick for its time. Even Memke IV tanks had 102mm frontal hull armor. The tank could withstand German 37mm and 50mm shells. It saw action at El Alamein and in the subsequent Italian and Northern European campaigns. The Churchill's main advantage was its exceptional armor and robust chassis. It easily navigated difficult terrain and boulders, making it indispensable for storming fortifications. Its disadvantages included its extremely low speed, up to 25 kilometers per hour, and a difficult crew. The turret was cramped, and early models suffered several breakdowns. Interestingly, 344 Churchill Memkison and the 8 tanks were transferred to the USSR, where they also saw combat. Churchill's joke about the tank's name, MK Worst Evaluation, when they realized it was no good, they named it after me. It became famous throughout the world, but later modifications, 7 to 8, already had a 75mm gun and served as an infantry support tank. France Somua S-35. The Somua S-35, developed by Somua in 1935, was one of the best medium tanks of its time. Its design began in 1934 to 1935, and serial production continued until 1940. A total of approximately 440 vehicles were produced. The S-35 was equipped with a 47mm SA-35L/32 cannon, a 190 horsepower diesel engine, and a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour. Its armor protection, slightly thickened, cast hull and turret, reached 47mm in the front. This was superior to the early German Panzer III tanks at the time. French officers considered the S-35 an excellent battle tank. With a powerful gun and sloped armor, it was better than many of its French and foreign counterparts. For example, it outperformed early models of the Panzer III. The German invasion in May 1940 demonstrated the S-35's tactically effective nature. The French achieved local successes with it, but due to poor use and command errors, the entire army quickly capitulated. Almost all 440 French S-35s were captured or destroyed in the summer of 1940. Some ended up in service with Germany, Italy, and Belgium, and even saw service on the Eastern Front. The S-35's weakness was its single-man turret hatch. The commander doubled as both loader and gunner, significantly slowing fire in combat. Furthermore, its complex cast construction made it expensive and time-consuming to repair. Interestingly, the project was continued, taking into account the experience of 1940. A new version of the Somua S-40 with an improved chassis and turret was ready for production in the summer of 1940, but the war prevented its production till the end of the war. The T-34's shortcomings were primarily ergonomic. Initially, the turret only had space for 2 people. The commander operated the gun himself, and the narrow viewing slits and the lack of a turret traverse mechanism made the crew less effective than the Germans. However, these issues were gradually addressed through a series of upgrades. T-34 losses were enormous. The USSR lost or disabled approximately 44,900 of these tanks, the most of any tank in the war. But thanks to mass production, troop levels were constantly replenished. In the spring of 1944, a modernized version, the T-34-85, was developed based on the T-34. It received a new 3-man turret with an 85mm ZSS-53 cannon, which significantly increased the vehicle's firepower. The new 85mm barrel allowed it to penetrate the Tiger's turret from 500 meters, and a separate gunner and loader relieved the commander of much of the burden. The T-34-85's weight increased to approximately 32.5 tons, but the chassis remained the same. With the introduction of the T-34-85, the Soviet Union had produced approximately 48,950 of these tanks by the end of the war. This modernization kept the tank relevant against Panther and Tiger. Notably, the T-34-85 captured in the Korean War was considered quite capable. Its 85mm gun could penetrate 100 millimeters of armor, and the tank itself was deemed damage-resistant thanks to its sloped armor. This concludes our review. We've covered the most famous medium tanks of the era, the American Sherman, the German Panzer III and IV, the British Cromwell and Churchill, the French Somua S-35, the Italian M14/41, and of course the Soviet T-34 and T-34-85. Each reflected its country's approach to war. Some emphasized mass production and reliability, others armor and firepower. All were designed for one purpose: to destroy enemy armored vehicles and fortifications, and they played their part. Thank you for your attention. Like it if you learned something new. and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe